Let's get political.
We're not shocked that Pramila Jayapal lied about a vote she took. We're not shocked. We're not surprised. This is normal for her. But it is important to call it out so that other people who might be shocked or surprised will learn about it. That's the reality. We can talk about Pramila Jayapal until we're blue in the faces. We all know exactly what it is she stands for. We know it already. But there are a whole lot of people out there who have no clue. Understand that when Democrats claim that they stand firmly against political violence, you should not believe them. And all you have to do is point to Pramila Jayapal as to why. Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, personally, his staff and he, personally wrote the resolution condemning the murder and condemning political violence in general. And this vote that took place on Friday should have been unanimous, but it wasn't. You had a whole host of Democrats, almost half, voting no, and that included squad grandmother Pramila Jayapal. But what bothers me about this is not her vote, it's her lie afterward, because she's trying to get points as if she is against political violence and condemns what happened, when that's not how she's acting. She puts out a statement insisting that the reason why she opposed this resolution was, quote, "This Republican resolution was designed as a political gotcha, trying to force every member of Congress to lift up the views of Charlie Kirk rather than simply condemning his assassination." And then she doubles down. She claims that, quote, "Congress should have been voting on a unifying resolution condemning this horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk without lionizing his highly controversial speech or actions." Now, if you didn't read the resolution, you might presume what she just said is somewhat close to reality. But having read the resolution, because it's not very long, it's like a page long, everything in her statement is a complete and utter fabrication. Everything. Except her voting no. That was honest.
That's so out of character for her.
I know. You never expect it coming from Pramila. But what she did there in the resolution 719, she just lied. She completely lied. There is not a portion of the 4 sentences in this resolution that does even close to what it is she said. It condemns in the strongest possible terms the assassination of Charlie Kirk and all forms of political violence. Is that political, that sentence?
No.
Okay. It commends and honors the dedicated law enforcement and emergency personnel for their tireless efforts in finding the suspect responsible for the assassination and urges the administration of swift justice to the suspect. Is that political? I get that Pramila doesn't like cops, so that might have been a turnoff. But was that political? Did that endorse Charlie Kirk's positions on anything?
Nope.
No. Extends its deepest condolences and sympathies to Charlie Kirk's family, including his wife Erica and their 2 young children, and prays for comfort, peace, and healing in this time of unspeakable loss. Anything in there?
Controversial.
I know. I was a little iffy on even reading that. I wanted to keep that one behind. I'm glad I didn't, though, because, we try to be honest. It says it honors the life, leadership, and legacy of Charlie Kirk, whose steadfast dedication to the Constitution, civil discourse, and biblical truth inspired a generation to cherish and defend the blessings of liberty. Now, I'm presuming Pramila Jayapal wants to pretend that that sentence there does anything other than speak factually about what Charlie Kirk did. It doesn't endorse any of his positions there. It doesn't even mention his position other than defending the blessings of liberty, which is rather vague. Vague enough to not be controversial. Right? That's presumably the intent. Did that support any of his positions or even mention any of them?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's the last one in this resolution that's the controversial one.
You got to finish it, yeah.
Yeah, let's read the last sentence, because maybe Pramila has a point. Calls upon all Americans, regardless of race, party affiliation, or creed, to reject political violence, recommit to respectful debate, uphold American values, and respect one another as fellow Americans. No, there was nothing in there that she claimed. So everything that she claimed in this is incorrect. That is the resolution. Now, there's an introduction, in fairness. But again, the introduction to it, which is the whole whereas, doesn't get into his particular positions. It really doesn't. I mean, we're talking about whereas leaders at every level must stand united in unequivocal condemnation of political violence, regardless of their ideology. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. She's lying when she tells you otherwise. She is absolutely lying. There was no lionizing in this. There was no gotcha in any of this. This was a plain, clear statement against murdering political opponents. Now, Jayapal didn't have to vote no. She could have voted present, like some of her colleagues did. Some of her colleagues voted present. And yet she chose to just vote no. That's not the mark of someone standing on principle. It's the mark of someone so consumed by hatred of the right, hatred of Charlie Kirk, that she couldn't even condemn the killing of a political opponent without spinning all of these excuses. That's pathetic. That's truly pathetic. And compare her own rhetoric to the resolution, because we've covered Pramila Jayapal for years, specifically her rhetoric. Because she says in her statement that the Republicans were trying to silence free speech by, quote, putting words in my mouth that I endorse Charlie Kirk's views. Of course, nothing in the resolution actually does that. But I suppose it could be seen as a gotcha if the intent was we're going to get all these evil Democrats to not condemn political violence. I suppose that's a gotcha. And kudos to the Democrats who chose not to look at this as some sort of political gotcha, because it wasn't. Democrats did vote for this, in favor of this. Good for them. Good for them. But she has been flirting with the by any means necessary crowd and sometimes just full out endorsing them. Someone who consistently treats conservatives as enemies to be dehumanized, silenced, to be destroyed. She has spent years amplifying the rhetoric that paints everyone who's a conservative as a fascist or a Nazi or as a threat to democracy. She has explicitly told her base to, quote unquote, fight tooth and nail against the Republicans that she pretends are literal threats to democracy. She is in that camp. She uses the rhetoric that is being condemned in this resolution. So why not just say that's why she voted against it? It's like, hey, if I vote in favor of this resolution, I don't know if I could ever send a tweet out again. I don't know if I could ever do an interview on MSNBC or CNN. Just say it that way. Because again, at least that'd be more honest than pretending what's in the resolution isn't actually in the resolution. They lecture us on the left all the time about lowering the temperature. And yet, when the temperature rises to deadly violence, an assassination, she chooses to stoke the flames instead of condemning the fire, condemning the hate. This was the least controversial thing that they could have voted for and showed some sort of unity. But they're not interested in that. Not all Democrats, but progressives, they're not interested in this. And she just had to lie about it.
It was kind of a softball for them, really. I mean,
It was the most softball of softballs. But again, maybe it was a gotcha. Maybe the gotcha was literally, I'm going to show by doing the least controversial statement, resolution on condemning political violence, just to show you how far gone too many Democrats are. And people are paying attention to this. People are paying attention to this. Kayleigh McEnany is going to be on the show in the 5 o'clock hour, 5:30. She was doing special coverage for Fox News yesterday of the Charlie Kirk Memorial. And she said this on air, and I said this earlier on the show. I believe that folks who are either apolitical or sort of on the fence, they sometimes go one way, sometimes go the other way, they're paying attention to these moves, the hate that comes out of an assassination. They're noting that Charlie wasn't who he's being smeared to be. they spend 2 seconds looking up any of his content. Let's say you go into this not knowing who Charlie Kirk was, right? And there's plenty of people who have no idea who Charlie Kirk was. And they hear all these nasty things about him. You don't think they're going to have access or any interest in just Googling some of the basic stuff and then realizing that he's being smeared? I mean, even the most egregious of quotes that they continue to put out, Naomi Ishizaki, the Seattle Times' least credible and least talented columnist, she has a piece out today railing against the culture that she says is guilty of forcing people to lionize Charlie Kirk. And something along the lines of, it's not good enough to simply say the assassination was wrong, but we have to lionize him. How could one lionize him when you look at these quotes? And she quotes some of the things he said, except they're all dramatically taken out of context, like dramatically taken out of context. And she did what Karen Attiah from the Washington Post did that led to her termination. Except, of course, Seattle Times not going to fire Naomi Ishizaki. If you fired every reporter or journalist there who lies or tells mistruths or is bad faith, you wouldn't have a staff. You have like 3 people working there. They'd be all in the sports section, I think. But she's doing exactly what Karen Attiah did, but she's doing it knowing that the quote was out of context. All these quotes that she's taking in this piece out of context. That's what they do. But it's going to get someone interested in at least finding out who Charlie Kirk is. They're going to do one quick Google search or YouTube search and immediately say, wait a minute, whoa, he's nothing like what we were just told. And you know that they're going to be interested in doing this because we have access to the numbers of people who Google Charlie Kirk and look up these videos. We see the counters on these. This is not just conservatives who are looking it up. They are pushing people more and more and more to the right. More and more to the right. And again, that's a positive in all of this. Jasmine Crockett, of course, did not vote for the Charlie Kirk resolution on, I believe it was CNN. She said that she was disappointed that more white members of Congress didn't vote no.
One of the things I do want to point out that's not been laid out that honestly hurts my heart is when I saw the no votes, there were only 2 Caucasians. For the most part, the only people that voted no were people of color because the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk continuously put out there was rhetoric that specifically targeted people of color. And so it is unfortunate that even our colleagues could not see how harmful his rhetoric was, specifically to us.
Yeah, maybe you're the problem. She complains about rhetoric while calling conservatives Nazis. Jason Chaffetz, former congressman turned Fox News contributor, he was on this morning.
She's never heard Charlie Kirk. You listen to the message of Charlie Kirk said, hey, if you disagree, let's talk it out. It's so rare. When I was first elected to Congress, Lawrence, I really did think we all believed in the same thing. We just had different ways of getting there. When I left Congress, I was convinced, no, that's not true. This is a fight of good versus evil. It truly is. And what was exhibited by some, not all, but some of the Democrats and the way they've handled this, the way they've handled violence and death and an assassination. If we can't come together on an assassination of a private citizen, somebody who wasn't in elected office, when are we going to come together? I think it is truly a fight of good versus evil. I really do.
I agree with him. And he's right, by the way, to say that not every Democrat thinks this way. But a large and seemingly growing number of progressives do think this way. And that's the most dangerous part. While I don't think they define or should define the entire Democratic Party, the Democratic Party itself is allowing them to define them by giving them so much power and influence. I mean, in what world does it make sense that AOC would have any power within the Democratic Party? Or even outside of that, Zoran Mamdani. In what world would you allow him as much influence over the Democratic Party unless you are actively trying to cultivate the socialist, progressive, communist part of this country, which numbers indicate are growing, at least people who espouse these kinds of views on the left?